morning, beautiful people. Hope you're doing well on this beautiful Monday morning. How it's good to be alive on this beautiful March 23rd, 2026. The show starts now. I'm grateful to be back on with you yet again. We have breaking news from this morning, late last night, this morning, into this morning, I should say, of flight crew, a flight that collided with an emergency services vehicle in New York LaGuardia Airport. We're discussing a little bit of that today. We'll be discussing a resurfaced George Soros video where Chrystia Freeland was interviewing him, and he mentioned some things that kind of align, or I should say kind of fully align with what Mark Carney's been doing in the vernacular and nomenclature that he's been using as prime minister. So we'll be discussing that and what that means. And then, of course, we've been seeing the likes of conservative campaign manager Steve Outhouse showing up on various networks to discuss and talk about Poilievre last week, his speeches, what he's been going on about, the goals of the Conservative Party, and quite frankly, he did a fantastic job doing that. I'll be discussing that, and then as well as a bonus to end the day. Your boy is, I'll be honest with you, I've kind of given up on X in terms of the social media platform. Kind of given up on it. So now I just troll on there now for kicks and giggles. And well, I trolled last night and woke up this morning to some hilarious responses from the left. So we're going to finish off the show discussing that today, because I was just laughing my head off. I'm like, whoa, they dunked on themselves, quite frankly. It's what happened. So we'll be discussing this and so much more. Welcome to the Elevate Report. I'm happy to have you on the show with me. The chat is looking beautiful this morning. We have Winkinden, who dropped 5 new memberships on the homies. Really appreciate you doing that for the homies. Let's go. And keep the chat live, keep it respectful, but let's keep the discourse going. We can disagree, we can agree, we can do it all the things aside from threaten each other. We don't want that going on, but keep the chat respectful. Hit the like button on the way in. It gets the people going. And as well, I have not been pushing these, and I really need to, because I made, what was it? I think there's only 200 of these left in the world. There's only 200 of these left. And you'd be like, Josh, that says the Elevate podcast, not the Elevate Report. And I say, yes. Vintage Yetis for the Elevate podcast. If you want a piece of history, go to our store right now and you can go order one. And then you can also add a merit shirt on top of that if you so choose to continue contributing to meritocracy. But if you don't want to, that's okay too. Keep being here for free. I'm here to deliver great value. Nonetheless, I do not care. I'm just saying, if you want a little piece of history, there it is for you, because that ain't coming back. And no more of those are going to be made. As soon as those are out, they're out. We're done with them. And we're moving on to new pastures with the Elevate Report. Let's get into our first story, shall we? All right. So, CBS News reports 2 pilots are dead after an Air Canada plane collided with a fire truck at LaGuardia Airport. CBS News' Chris Van Cleve reports that the emergency vehicle was responding to an odor inside a United Airlines flight that aborted its takeoff. Here's what we know so far, and here's a little clip of what we know and what was being discussed. And this was reported and posted at about 8 a.m. this morning, Atlantic time, 7 a.m. Eastern.
Air Canada Jazz, or Air Canada Express CRJ regional jet. We understand there were about 72 passengers plus 4 crew on board. Tragically, the flight crew, the 2 pilots, were killed in this collision. What we know is the plane was cleared to land. It had landed on runway 4. It was slowing down when it collided with a fire truck that was responding to a situation on the other side of the airfield. We can hear in air traffic control audio that the controller cleared that fire truck to cross runway 4, then quickly realized that he had just put it on a collision course with this airplane, pleaded with that fire truck to stop, but it was too late. Those couple of seconds were not enough time for that fire engine to stop. The collision happened. We know that approximately 41 people were taken to the hospital with varying injuries, 39 of them from the plane, 2 of them firefighters on board that fire truck. The NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, is launching a GO team. They will lead this investigation to look into the situation as to how this happened, why this happened. One thing that's very clear from the air traffic control audio is it was one controller who appeared to be handling an emergency with another airplane as well as this situation. So this all started, Vlad, actually before the Air Canada flight touchdown, a United flight.
So those are kind of the details of what's coming out at this point in time. Is just one big miscommunication, misunderstanding, which has led to the death of the two pilots flying the Air Canada flight, which is, it's saying something, right? You might be having a tough day. You might be having a tough time, and varying degrees of what you're feeling and going through right now. Some anxiety you may be feeling. But man, having to be that air traffic controller right now is not a person I want to be at the moment. Knowing that your miscommunication led to the death of two people and the injuries of several others is, can only imagine how that's feeling. On top of the families that were impacted by this, who will now see their loved ones who have perished, unfortunately, due to this. So this has kind of been gathering the news here this morning. Wanted to kind of share it off the top before we get into the meat of what we're talking about today, of how it just kind of puts things in perspective, right? Where we're frustrated by the news. We're frustrated by politics. We're frustrated by a lot of things we're seeing. However, things can change drastically. Not saying that what you're feeling and what you're sensing is invalid, because 100% is. But sometimes, even in those times where it just feels negative and it just feels like it's just incessant on you, it's always good to kind of just take those 2 seconds to be like, okay, life sucks right now. I'm not enjoying it. However, there are still things to be grateful for. And let's focus on those things, because there are two people that were lost in this that their families will never see them again, unfortunately. So those are things kind of put things in perspective as we start out our day to day, as we get into, what is really been going on. And some news footage, or some footage has risen to the surface of George Soros doing an interview with Chrystia Freeland in 2009, right in the heat of the '08 financial crisis. And there's some statements he makes and words he uses where it gets you going, whoa, okay. It's one thing to see it at the context that it's in. It's a whole other watching in the context of what you've seen Mark Carney do over the past year. So we're going to watch two clips on this. We're going to play the opening a minute and then the last minute and a half. And we're going to discuss it and talk about it throughout and what is being said and what is being discussed here. Catch this.
What sort of a financial deal should Obama be seeking to strike when he travels to China next month?
No, I think this would be the time, because you really need to bring China into the creation of a new world order, financial world order. They are kind of reluctant members of the IMF. They play along, but they don't make much of a contribution because it's not their institution. Their share is not commensurate. Their voting rights are not commensurate to their weight. So I think you need a new world order, that China has to be part of the process of creating it, and they have to buy in. They have to own it the same way as, let's say, the United States owns the Washington Consensus.
So there's the first opening minute there, and we'll post the link here in the chat here later, so you can watch this at a different time, watch the full thing. But hear that. We're looking for a new world order, and this is in context. George Soros, so let's put this in context first. George Soros, you haven't heard of him, multi-billionaire, super rich dude, and just filthy, filthy rich, and has had a lot of impact on policy in the United States. He has funded various NGOs that fly in the face of national interest to the United States, at least in terms of for it to remain as it is currently. People have been really upset with some of the moves he's made and how he's been acting behind the scenes, and are very sketched out by him. So to sit back and watch this from 2009 saying, we need this new financial world order. We need China to lead it. USA is going to start dragging, which I think was the second clip we'll show here. it is very eye-opening to witness Chrystia Freeland, of all people, being wanting to interview this individual, him talking about this and pushing this idea. It gets you asking questions. It gets you thinking, okay, weird, considering what we saw Mark Carney do, talking about going to China, talking about the new world order, cozying up to China, sharing setting up a relationship with the Chinese, to share our security intelligence with them, to bring their media here for our CBC to go over there to do these fluff pieces about China all of a sudden and how they're so hard done by the United States. Starts making you ask the questions. It's like, okay, you wanted this new world order. You wanted China to direct this new world order, and you want the U.S. to start becoming less in the world. That's what was communicated in this clip. And we'll jump here to the last minute and a half as well of the interview of what he gets himself into.
Broken down, only we haven't quite recognized it. And so you need to create a new one. And this is the time to do it.
In the United States, how worried are you about the budget deficit and maybe about the possibility of inflation?
Well, certainly a decline in the value of the dollar is necessary in order to compensate for the fact that the U.S. economy will remain rather weak, will be a drag on the global economy. China will emerge as the motor replacing the U.S. consumer. And of course, it's a smaller motor because the Chinese economy is much smaller. So the world economy will have less of a motor. So it will move forward slower than it has in the last 25 years. But China will be the engine driving it forward, and the U.S. will be actually a drag that's being pulled along through a gradual decline in the value of the dollar. So there would be a slow decline in the value of the dollar, a managed decline. And that would be the adjustment that it needs to be accomplished. Now, it could actually get out of hand. And certainly the fear of inflation will precede inflation itself.
So, you got that there. You heard it there. You heard the focus is managed decline is the word being used. We need to start seeing the U.S. drag, and China will replace their economy. Though because they're a smaller economy than the U.S. is now, it'll take some time, but we'll get there. George Soros, in that interview with Chrystia Freeland, said what we've all been seeing recently. We need to see a decline in the dollar. We need to see a managed decline in the United States. Kind of fascinating because this was, again, 2009. I have a feeling, strong feeling, that it's fairly clear to me, because George Soros has such an impact on American politics, that this was the engine behind the Democratic Party, because we saw what the Democrats were, the policies they're instituting that was leading to those results. It was leading them to a declined dollar value, a declined manufacturing base, a declined standard of living. That was happening in the U.S. underneath Democratic policies. And then the wild card showed up in Donald Trump, and all of a sudden that had put a wrench in a lot of what they're planning to do. And now we see what we're seeing right now. I'm mainly bringing this up. Two things. First off, the Canadian context, which we'll get here shortly. But secondly, is what you're seeing and feeling is not by accident. Is the plan, at least from, I shouldn't say the plan, I'll say it seemed like the desire of the more of the rich, the elite of the world, was to force the U.S. into decline and to see other powers rise up. And that was the plan, what they were trying to go with. And then Trump threw a wrench into that plan. And now we're seeing this huge tension that's happening at the highest level of the highest office in the United States, where it's a big fight and grapple for power. And that's now what we're seeing, where Donald Trump in some ways he's in some ways slowed that down. However, if we kind of look south north of the border to Canada, that's exactly what we're witnessing and what the Liberal Party has done, unencumbered here. Is the difference with the United States, it's slowed it down because you had someone who won office twice and who is fighting against that idea. In Canada, it's been the opposite, where we have had an official opposition who's been fighting against it, but they've never gotten into office. So they've not been able to actually slow it down. And that's why we've been seeing such an increasing steady decline in our country in terms of your way of living, what you can afford, your groceries, your power, this, that, the other. It's been talked about and has been talked about for quite some time now. And what you're experiencing is not by accident. Seeing what the likes of George Soros was proposing here, and the likes of Chrystia Freeland being the one to interview him, and then seeing what he said in that interview, and then to line that up with what we've seen Mark Carney do and what he's talked about. Again, the New World Order with China, getting Canada closer to China, saying, screw you, the United States, and pushing forward with China. On top of what the result of what we're seeing in the economy, and then we have a media apparatus telling us, no, it's all good. Nothing's happening here. It's all good. Life is still good in Canada. Why are you crying about it? Don't whine. It's unbecoming to cry about it. That's kind of what we're witnessing at this present time. And a managed decline is a term that's been used steadily in the Canadian context as well. And I don't know how you can tell me different at this present time. There's clearly a decline in the way of living. There's been a decline in the quality of life. There's been a decline in Canadian happiness, as we saw that on Thursday. We've gone from what it was 6th place overall of happiness 10 years ago down to 26th, 25th, something along those lines. Every metric has shown that we have seen a decline in every important metric in our country. So for someone to propose this could be a managed decline is not crazy. And if someone tells you different, well, you can tell them to kick rocks, because that's exactly what we're seeing. Is it's been a decline over the past 10 years. And by definition has been a managed decline. We've been seeing it with our auto workers, our steel sectors, our manufacturing. Oh, well, Donald Trump did it. Donald Trump is something you could point to. But you were planning on doing that the whole time anyways, was continue to haul out our manufacturing and our jobs here and push those to other countries. So that is what we are seeing, the destabilization that we're currently witnessing. And we've seen what Mark Carney's been doing. We see what he's about. And we even kind of, Blacklocks reported on this last week. And just stuff like this, you got to keep in mind. Feds admit PM misled the media. Surprise, surprise. Prime Minister Mark Carney misled media on his private meetings with Chinese communist leaders. Privy Council records show documents written by cabinet aides directly contradicted Carney's claims that he raised human rights and foreign interference with his Beijing hosts. Topics of human rights and foreign interference were not brought up proactively by the Canadian Prime Minister, the Privy Council wrote in an inquiry of ministry tabled in the Commons. The document was tabled at the request of Conservative MP Ned Currick, who asked, with regard to the trip by the Prime Minister and other ministers to China in January, at which of the meetings was the subject of human rights and foreign interference brought up. There was no explanation. Carney, under questioning by reporters on January 16th, repeatedly claimed he raised concerns about human rights, and we will engage on those issues, he said. And yet, this is the document that was brought up, is saying topics of human rights and foreign interference were not brought up proactively by the Canadian Prime Minister, as written by the Privy Council. So, we know that Carney's involved in this to, get rich, get himself rich. We know this already. However, it's clear as day at this point where the bankers of the world and those who want to have more control over our countries and give us less rights and less say are now just actively putting people into politics now. Where, beforehand it was Justin Trudeau. It was Justin Trudeau and he was the face. He was the face of it. And guys like Mark Carney were behind the scenes helping him. And then it's got to the point where this guy stinks. We're just going to put the banker in, and we're going to stop playing. We're going to stop working behind the scenes, and we're just going to put the guy in. And that's what they did. And of course, if you bring up any questions about how Mark Carney became the leader of the Liberal Party and their quote unquote leadership race, it was just so weirdly manufactured in so many ways. You even just look at the debate where there was no actual debate. It was just agreeing on policies and just kind of rolling out the red carpet for Mark Carney. Even when Mark Carney would mess up in his French and saying likes of, what was it? Something along the lines of, we love Hamas or I support Hamas. And Freeland had to correct him, be like, no, we don't actually support Hamas. And he's like, oh yeah, of course, I don't actually. It was clear as day. It was just all one big coronation ceremony to bring him in. There was no true pushback, and any type of pushback, any real pushback that came about, well, they made sure to nuke, get rid of. And that's what happened. So to come around and tell me, oh, it's just a part of the process. Yeah, okay. Understood. This man hasn't been able to tell us the truth at any point. And alas, this is where we are currently at. So here we go. We move forward on to some chats, super chats. Mike Stewart says, did you see the uprisings in China yet? I emailed you. Yes, I saw the email. I'm looking into it. I'm mainly trying to verify what's happening and making sure. I'm just crossing my T's, dot my I's at this present time to make sure that that's exactly what's happening at the moment. Steve Tyler says, how can the left be so blind to this? I think, who was it? I think that's a good segue into our next clip, if I'm being quite honest with you. Is Steve Outhouse was asked that question on CTV with Ashley Capellas. I wasn't even planning to share this piece, but now that you bring it up, I'm going to share that with you right now. Let's see if we can. Because essentially, Ashley Capellas was asking about the polling that we're seeing and the improvements that we're seeing from the Liberals and how they're essentially smoking the Conservatives in the polling. And what is leading to Canadians to want to feel this and believe this? And this was Steve Outhouse's answer to that we will try to play out here.
Campaign manager, what do you think they're doing that is leading to that result?
Based on our conversations with a lot of Canadians, I think they want to see the vote that they made last year make a difference. So they are looking at this government through a lens of hope, and that they want to see them deliver, first of all, the deal that was promised, and then secondarily, kind of the relief on affordability and all those, day-to-day things that matter very, very much to them. So there is a hopefulness and I do believe that every time the president decides to kind of, launch a new message track that sort of, captures the imagination of the public for the day, they want to see the prime minister and they want to see this government get results and deal with this. So I think that there is a bit of, hope that's being put upon them. So ultimately, in the long run, if we're looking electorally, if we're boiling it down to that, will they deliver that? Will they deliver this deal that they promised that they would get by July of last year? Will they deliver relief for people in the cost of living? And I think that's where people will ultimately make decisions.
So there's an answer to that super chat and I quite frankly tend to agree, where we are such a hopeless nation right now. Things are not going well. The managed decline is being felt by so many. They just don't see what's happening behind the scenes. And in some ways, it's human nature. You don't want to be wrong. As you know, I'm a user experience designer. And one of the major number one rules when designing software and designing experiences for users to use is to making sure, say it takes typically 5 steps to complete a process, whether it be signing up for a newsletter or signing up for a new product or using a new product, what have you. There's typically an onboarding process you have to go to understand how to use the product. And say it takes 3 steps. As a user experience designer, we're taught to take those 3 steps and expand them to 5, 6, maybe 7 steps to make it as simple as possible. Why? Because the number one thing you don't want people feeling is stupid. The minute you make someone feel stupid, whether indirectly or directly, they shut off, they're done. They get frustrated, they get annoyed, and they leave your product altogether. And what Steve Athouse is talking about here, I think, is very real, is no one wants to be wrong. No one wants to admit that they are wrong. So they feel like for them, they made the right decision in choosing Mark Carney. So that's why they keep hitching their wagon, because they don't want to be wrong. Even though everything around them right now is telling them that they were. Everything around them is telling them that, well, they were hoodwinked. They don't want to admit it. So they're going to double down until they cannot double down anymore. And that time is coming, which brings us back down to the tension that happens typically between the likes of people who are conservative voters and who want to see Poilievre in, is those same liberal voters turn around and point the finger at you, saying you're negative, you don't like Canada, you're a sellout, and you just want to see Canada fail, is typically the accusations that get thrown at us. And I understand why. Because as conservatives, we keep being told Canada's all great, don't listen to them, they're lying to you, they just want to fearmonger, blah, 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 blah. All of that happens. And you just pointing out what's happening, the decline that's happening in everything across the board in our country. And they're saying you're just negative. At what point we have to keep pointing out what's happening for you to believe us? So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy at some point. We're like, well, you guys only think Canada's bad all the time, so we can't allow you to have leadership because you're just going to run the country in the ground even further. What? We've been telling you for years that this liberal government you keep voting in has been running down the country. And we're just pointing out the issues that we're seeing. But it brings us back to the point is people's egos are fragile. People don't want to be wrong. They don't want to feel stupid. They don't want to be hoodwinked. So it's a lot easier to go along with the delusion that things are going well, the delusion that life is all good, than to admit to themselves that, shoot, I was wrong. And this guy is not getting it done. And Steve Athouse here hits a very real human point, is people don't want to be wrong. They want to see their choice in prime minister succeed so they can feel like they made the right decision. And every report that comes out, whether it be the job reports, or we're seeing the manufacturing reports, or we're seeing the crime statistics, or we're seeing food inflation, what have you, comes out, it starts taking out one brick after another in that very, very delicate narrative that they've established in their own heads. So how does that happen? Well, especially those who want to see a conservative government, it's very easy, so easy, it's human nature, to be like, I told you so. Come on, wake up, you idiots. Come on, figure it out. And to that I'll say is unhelpful. It's not helpful. You want to bring someone to your side, you need to continue building them up even when it's incredibly hard and you want to just pound your head against the brick wall because they just won't listen. But there's nothing worse than someone having to get to the point of like, okay, I was wrong, and being told, I told you so. No one wants to hear that because they know they're wrong. And it's really important that we don't be those people that are those people that say, told you so, and dunk on them. Yeah, sure, there's some left-wing individuals who probably deserve it, for sure. There's a lot of jerks out there. And to those people, I'll dance on their grave. I'll dance on their heads when it comes to that time when they are proven to be wrong. And again, I say dance on the grave as a figure of speech. It's not literal. Wake up, crazy people. But I will be dancing on their head, those types of people's heads, because of what they've done, the damage they've been actively doing to our country. But I'm talking about the everyday person who's just trying to live their lives, who thought they made the right decision with Mark Carney and clearly are wrong. Those are the people you don't want to be saying, told you so. Because it's not helpful. It's not helpful. And it doesn't make them want to join the side or at least see your way of seeing things if that's just how you react. So that's my head where I'm at with that one. We have the likes of Alex Pittman, 3632. It says, did you see near 50% of liberals are on mental health medications, which is terrifying because that means the other 50% are going around unmedicated. Oh my gosh. Oh man. Gee, get wrecked. First off, yeah, that's I'm not going to say no. That's crazy. Wild statement there. Nylock says people need to ditch the narcissism. Yeah, 100%. People's pride is a downfall. It's a huge pride. It's a huge issue. But I will get back to Steve Outhouse's interview here with Vash Kapelos. And we'll play the first minute and 2 minutes of it where he gets into why they did this, why they're going down south of the border, the explanation behind it. And again, I think he did a very good job of explaining this and really setting the tone for the week. So there's a lot of from my understanding of this and what I'm seeing is this is media strategy at its finest from the Conservative Party of Canada. You have Pierre Poilievre, who was out all week last week in the US, meeting with various amounts of people, was over in Europe as well previously, trying to make the case for Canada, went on some very, very high-level podcasts, people who know them, and was getting that message out on all these podcasts, which is great. We've been wanting to see that. We're starting to see it. So Pierre Poilievre is back, taking some time over the weekend. And so now it's on Steve Outhouse to get out in front of the week and set the tone and set the narrative. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. That's why he went on Vash Kapelos' show. That's why he went on CBC News Network to get out in front of any of all this, any type of negative press that may be coming of it, and trying to set what the narrative is going to be for the week. And that's why we see him on the likes of Vash Kapelos talking about this. So it's the first minute and a half here. He talks about why they made this decision, why they're doing what they're doing.
With me now is Conservative Campaign Manager Steve Outhouse. Hi, Mr. Outhouse. Pleasure to see you again. Thanks for making the time.
Great to see you too.
Strategically, what was the objective going into this trip?
Well, I think there's two main objectives, and I apologize for this cold I'm battling, but two main objectives. Obviously, the first one is to be part of the Team Canada approach and to be down south of the border and talking about how it benefits both Canada and the U.S. to have stronger relationships and, tariff-free trade overall. And certainly there's always a domestic, angle to that as well. When you and I last spoke, we talked about how people want to see kind of more range from the leader and different sides of him, and I think that this chance to travel internationally is part of that, is showing different angles of the leader. Was it hard to convince him of that, because it is different than a strategy that was employed, let's say, a year ago? Right. No, I mean, this has been is something he's been talking about with members of caucus and members of the team, and now is the right time to do it, and so he was very pleased to do it. Let me ask you about the timing and sort of the impetus, because it's not just the trip, it's sort of
of bookended by those two speeches. It was the trip to Europe as well, appearances on Peter Mansbridge's podcast, the Rogan podcast. In that Mansbridge podcast, Mr. Poilievre said, like, I'm changing tacks. I'm just going to talk to everybody. I'm not just going to talk to people who kind of agree with me in the same vein. Is the timing of this motivated at all by, where the Conservatives are right now in the polls?
Yeah. Look, I've been around politics a while. Polls come and go. They go up, they go down. I've worked on other campaigns in Alberta, where Premier Smith was, low in the polls when we started our campaign. Premier Tony Wakeham was like 30 points underwater about preferred premier in the last public poll that was available. It doesn't stop us from just doing our job. In terms of timing, part of that is dictated by the parliamentary calendar, when break weeks happen and when you can get out and get on the road. And in terms of just the ability to book that, I mean, we've been working on that and with using that calendar as that basis.
Was it hard to book the Rogan podcast in particular?
So actually, Georges St. Pierre was the one who kind of made that connection, and from what I saw, basically the leader and Mr. Rogan were texting back and forth, and they set it up themselves.
So there you go. So this is clearly the tone that's being set by the campaign minister, Steve Outhouse here, and the Conservative Party, trying to establish the narrative as they go into the week. It was a very successful trip for Poilievre, and pretty much anyone looking in, aside from like the super partisans like Scott Reed, who still himself had to admit, great trip, but tried to throw his little 2 cents in there of what his motivations would be. One of them may be the fact his son has a job under this Mark Carney government. But we won't talk about that, though. But Mulcair coming out saying, hey, I thought it was a great trip, great speeches all around, great interviews. Poilievre did a great job of communicating what he needed to communicate. And so anyone who has a brain is looking at this is saying, yeah, like Poilievre did a great job. Now you need to capitalize on this. And that's what Outhouse is doing here, is now setting the tone for the week as he goes into this. And I'm so glad that I picked up and read the tea leaves properly in that Rogan interview, where I said on the show on Friday, I believe, where when I was watching the interview, I was like, if I'm hearing this right, it sounds like Georges St. Pierre was the connection between the two, which led to the interview. Turns out I was correct, which is, I think, super cool on so many levels, to see the likes of an icon like Georges St. Pierre getting involved and connecting the leader of the opposition and Poilievre with Rogan. I think it's super cool. And I'm glad that he was able to do that and able to make that happen, which shows another issue another thing where, Poilievre is making inroads with a lot of different types of people now. And I think that's a good thing. And people are going to begin to start seeing it on so many different levels. So that's I would say overall last week, very positive. And what we're seeing is what Poilievre's fighting against all this, right? And that's why people are getting so mad at him, is because, well, the managed decline, as we talked about, clearly it's been talked about in those elite circles of managed decline of the West, specifically you doing it to the United States first and then it kind of cascading through the other Western nations. Well, that narrative has been proven correct. We saw it in the interview with Soros and Freeland earlier. And then we see Carney's actions that follow it afterwards. It's clear that that is a goal. This is some degree a planned idea. And Mark Carney following that up and his actions following that type of rhetoric and narrative, well, I think it's safe to say, yes, it is a plan. This is what they want to do. And Poilievre is trying to fight against that. And this is why I always find it so I get it. To some degree, I'll talk about this. So you hear about the term uniparty a lot. And when I see how hard the left attacks Poilievre and how hard the media establishment works to fight Poilievre, it does, like, just the uniparty narrative just collapses for me on so many levels because of that. I understand why the narrative has piped up, though, is because the Conservative Party just wets the bed every election. So when people watch it happen in 2019, happen in 2021, happen in 2024, people start asking, is this on purpose now? Like, are you guys trying to lose? You guys say all the right things leading up to an election. Then when an election is called, you disappear. So to that degree, I understand why you would want to go down and explore that narrative and explore that reality, or that as a possibility. But then I look at the other side and just seeing the effort they're willing to suppress the dissidents, suppress the voice of Poilievre and his leadership, and his caucus and his cabinet. I'm just like, I don't know, man. I just have a hard time getting on board with that narrative, because they've been working super hard against him. And if what he's saying is factually incorrect, I think if Poilievre was controlled opposition, if Poilievre was uniparty, he wouldn't be going as hard as he is. He wouldn't. He naturally wouldn't. And it would be a lot easier just to kind of slightly push back against the liberal crazy laws. He wouldn't bring up immigration. He wouldn't bring up the likes of turfing the temporary foreign worker program. He wouldn't bring up the IRGC and extremists in our country. He wouldn't bring up the idea of just gutting and establishing new laws in our country to deal with crime. He wouldn't be talking about it. He wouldn't be going after China the way he is. And so I think that's where my head stands on this. And I know a lot of people disagree with me on it. But that's just where my head is on a lot of this. And I think with someone like Outhouse in his corner, I think we're going to start seeing we're going to begin seeing something different. And I very much look forward to someone like Outhouse being in his corner going into an election. And could he break the curse, the conservative curse of getting in their own ways when it comes to elections? Who knows? We'll see. But we continue to move on. Seeing if there's any super chats here that agree or disagree with me, or general chats that agree or disagree with me. Scotty War says, at some point, the Liberal voters for individual regret must turn into some sort of managed mass delusion. Potentially. Maybe. It's tough because, the conditioning goes on for about, when conditioning like that goes on for 10 years, and then it really ramps up around the Trump stuff, does someone ever really come out of it? Some don't. I don't think some people who will just be stuck in it. But it's that middle ground, which we're seeing in polling. And I can't stress this enough. The narrative we keep hearing constantly is liberals ahead in the polls, liberals ahead in the polls, liberals ahead in the polls. But then when you look at some of these more broken down polls, you're starting to see the middle ground of people who are unsure about the conservatives and about the liberals. And that is growing. The middle ground is growing, which means the normal people are starting to question what this party's really all about. And it goes back to what I said on Friday. They are who we thought they were. When even the likes of Althea Raj and some different CBC pundits are admitting, this is not going the way we thought it was going to go, normal people are starting to see it and starting to feel it. There's definitely hardcore red liberals that they'll die by this party no matter who's leading it and who's running it into the ground. They don't care. But there's far more middle ground people than we realize. And those people were swayed last election due to fear. And it's really important that Poilievre and the Conservatives really keep hitting on that message of hope. Because that's a perfect love drives out fear. Oh, where's that one from? 1 John. Let's go, baby. Mark on Blanco says, happy Monday morning. Great work you're doing, Josh. Thank you, Mark. Much appreciated. Much love. Snooky Smokehouse says, mind your own damn business party. Let's go. Oh, baby. Proud Grammy says, Freeland wrote his memoirs. Soros. I feel like I heard that. I need to look into double checking that if that's true or not. Nylock says, I think we hope it's a uniparty because we don't want to believe that many Canadians are so low thinking it's unnerving to be surrounded by NPCs. That's fair. That's honestly a very fair statement. That's real. That's real. Trash and Bash says, keep up the good work. Thanks, man. Much appreciated. Much love. All right. As we finish off the show today here, we are going to have some fun because this is it. The beat that I'm banging is delicious. Fergalicious definition make the boys go loco. Sorry, folks, had to do that. All right, so this post came up on my feed last night. Hilarious. I've been seeing a lot of these lately, right? I talked to a friend of a friend who says they're voting liberal now. So read this, right? So good. Jiggly News writes, I know 6 conservatives that have watched the Joe Rogan interview with Pierre Poilievre and have all decided to vote liberal now. I was like, wow. Love that anecdotal evidence of things that likely never happened. So I'm just in this state right now where specifically on the X platform, I don't take anything seriously. I'm just at this point where I'm just throwing stuff out. I don't care anymore. And I just call it out for what it is and just being very maliciously obtuse, I'm being quite honest. So anyways, Jiggly Pants wrote that. So I quote tweeted that and wrote this. Well, I spoke to 13 liberals that have watched the Joe Rogan interview with Poilievre and have all decided to vote conservative now. And as you can see, it's doing moderately well, over 19,000 views now. They dunked on themselves. They memed themselves. The liberals memed themselves with this, and I'll show you a meme. We'll pull up we'll look at the view activity on this one. The quote tweets. Gator Gum, pretty proponent left-wing account on X, writes, I've personally spoken with 26,486 conservatives that have all said they're voting liberal now. Not because of a podcast, because who would let a podcast determine their vote, ? Rather, all the lies they see right-wing Twitter posting nonstop. Winky face. And I'm like, you're doing the meme. You're doing the thing. You're doing the thing that I was literally mocking. I talked to 13 people who are now voting conservative all of a sudden because they watched a podcast. Literally me making fun of this whole notion that I'm voting liberal now because I watched a podcast. It's stupid. It's stupid. I'm glad you could agree with me in calling out how dumb that really is. Thank you, Gator Gum. Much appreciated. You have Northwest says top 13 things that never happened. You'd be correct. Monica's, I spoke to 36 conservative women that watched the Joe Rogan interview with Poilievre and have all decided to vote liberal. And then followed that up with, this show is in the manosphere. Yo, all the women in the chat, you are watching a show from the manosphere. You know what? What's kicks and giggles? Let's do a little poll, shall we? Let's have a poll. Let's do a poll. Are you a man or woman watching the show currently? And try to answer as honestly as possible, just for kicks and giggles, because all you amazing women I know who are in the chats, who are in the general chat, posting super chats, I know you are women. And let's just throw that out there. Boom. How many of you women are watching? How many of you women are watching? Because apparently you're watching a show that comes from the manosphere. Come on, baby. Holy jumping. We have, people are making fun of this. I'm trying to see I met 14 NDP voters on the plane yesterday. They said that after watching Joe Rogan interview with Pierre Poilievre, they all said they're switching to liberal. It is hilarious to me seeing the quotes and reposts on this. And then we also look at the comments. Comments are even better, dude. The comments are juicy. Here we go. Silly Rabbit Fafo says, no liberals watch Joe Rogan. Okay, fair enough. We keep going. Vincent Thibault says, I spoke to 26 block voters who have never heard of Joe Rogan. Here we got the Golden Girl Gadfly says, sure, do they believe in Santa and the Tooth Fairy as well? Hank Tuttle says, look at the latest polls. Alex says, the numbers speak to which is more likely. It's just, they took this so seriously. They took this so seriously, and I couldn't help but laugh. I was like, you know, guys, thank you for the content. It means the world to me. Single tier, where I have to mock you guys so much. Throwing out just random statements like, I talked to 5 people. They're all voting liberal now because of this podcast. Come on, dude. Come on. And I'm glad I could do the thing. I'm glad I could call out the outrageousness of that statement. Say, yes, I talked to 13 liberals who are now voting conservative now because they watched a podcast. And then the left just trying to dunk on it without realizing they're dunking on themselves. Hilarious. Thank you for the content, folks. Thank you for the content and being absolutely obtuse individuals who are so stinking partisan that you can't get out of your own way. All right, here we go, folks. Poll so far. We have 465 votes, 51% men, 51% men watching this show. Let's go. And I'll be honest with you too. I'll do my best to be very consistent on this. Is I know dang sure that most people who voted women on this are not women. You guys are probably lying, but what is what it is. You guys are hilarious. But we move forward onto some more super chats about this. Comical. Is Wickenden says, our biggest problem is that we refuse to believe that the people in control couldn't be that evil. That is true. We have lived in a very, up to this point, or up until at least 2015, 2016, 2017, we've lived into a very good time. We've had hiccups in there. You had recessions and this, that, the other. But overall, life has been very good as a Canadian up until then. And things slowly started getting worse over time. And it's really hard to really accept that things can actually get very bad. And that's an uncomfortable truth to accept and to deal with. So I can see why. It's a hard truth to take into account and to accept. Paula Park has become a member for 2 months, I should say. She says, remember, beyond fear lies freedom. Dang straight, Paula. Dang straight. Another woman who watched the podcast, a Manosphere podcast, apparently. -1-2 says, I know 506,932 liberals that watched the Joe Rogan interview with Pierre Poilievre and have all decided to vote conservative now. Let's go. Yeah. Dude, that's impressive that 500,000 people, man. Unreal. Oh, man. I love that we are just taking time right now to call out the absurdity of the stupidness of this nonsense. Chapey Alberta First says, the first mass hysteria was Trudeau-mania. Those caught up in that are now in their 70s and 80s. Now we are in another one. It is TDS and has now morphed into American hate syndrome, or as the slogan goes, elbows up. JP, I'll say this. That is an incredibly insightful comment that I've never once taken into account, thought of. You're right, Trudeau mania was crazy. 70s and 80s. And particularly when he first got in office, so that would be the 70s. And those people are now the elbows up crowd. Not something I've considered before, but that is something to take into account. I appreciate that, JP. Great call out. Nylock says, they aren't smart enough to vote properly. Why do they think they are smart enough to understand a joke? Oh, man. It's so real. So real. Mark Gonblanco says, it's crazy that the theme against conservatives is global and across nations. Yeah, it is interesting how that's all kind of lining up, isn't it? Bueno Kitty says, LOL X Rage Bait. Elevate has Feel Good Friday segment. Now need a Twitter Troll Tuesday. I want a TDS Tuesday, but the trolling is next level. So real. Maybe we should start doing that. Bueno Kitty, not a bad idea. Twitter Troll Tuesday. I like the sound of that. I am a conservative boomer says, excuse me. I voted woman and I am no one. Wait, what did you write? Excuse me, I voted woman and I'm no one. LOL. I'm going to assume that you're just saying you're a woman and that you watch the show. I appreciate it. Appreciate it. Love you. I'm a conservative boomer. Love it. Scotty War says, Canada is not the only country facing managed decline, i.e. Iran and Cuba. Huh? Huh?
Amazing.
No.
Burn it down!
I don't know. Marcon Blanco says, I just like to be number one. So here's another $5. I can't help it. I'm American. Who wants to outbid me? Marcon Blanco is now turning the show into an auction. Much appreciated. You guys are awesome. So The Reckoning 613 says, interesting. Lots of boomer women in this chat room. Can you do a poll that breaks down age, gender, and who we vote for? You know what? I'm going to bring this to Reg, and we should just do that. That'd be fun. That'd be great. Sunasol Silver says, I can't believe Canadians killed Canada because we want the legalization of marijuana. Nah, that makes perfect sense. Isn't that something, isn't it? So there's a couple different things at play. I honestly, this is going to be a hot take. I do not blame Canadians for voting Trudeau in 2015. Not one bit at all. Was I one of the ones who voted for Trudeau in 2015? Absolutely not. I was in the boat of this, is I really didn't like Trudeau, didn't like where he was going. I was getting kind of out of where I was at was I was kind of getting tired of Harper. He wasn't really introducing anything new, and it was just kind of like, oh, steady going along for a bit. It was 11 years at that point, right? So you're like, maybe we do need some fresh blood in here. And so with that mentality, and that was me as a conservative voter back in 2015, but I was still voting Harper because my reasoning was, I don't like what Trudeau's thinking or talking about right now. He's throwing a lot of rainbow pie in the sky ideas out there that I'm like, how is that even possible? And I'm at the point where I'll go with the devil I know versus the devil I do not know. And that was my reasoning for, let's stick with Harper for the next 4 years until we see where that goes and until the Liberals actually put forward something serious. And well, that Harper fatigue on top of Trudeau saying, "Oh, I'm Pierre's son." Oh, is that not enough? Okay. Legalize marijuana, baby. Oh, now that's going to, that brought a lot of the youth vote over too. So there's a lot. And then he played the whole game. It's like, if you want to get an idea, if you want a serious idea with what Justin Trudeau's campaign was like in 2015, go look at how Zoran Mamdani won New York. If you look at his campaign and what led to him becoming mayor, he ran almost an identical campaign to Justin Trudeau. Hit all the same talking points, did all the same things, took transit, walked to places, did all the things Justin did in 2015. And it was, I got to the point where I'm like, I have a feeling Zoran took notes, had to have taken notes from Justin Trudeau. It got to the point where I was like, this is too much like what Justin did in 2015 for it to be by accident. So, alas, we got 2015, but I do blame Canadians for 2019. I definitely do. And I also blame the Conservatives for 2019 as well, because, man, Andrew Scheer just didn't do a great job. He ran a poor campaign in 2019. He made it all about hating Trudeau instead of offering a hopeful message that would get people on board. And that was another problem that we saw there. And there's the thing is, Andrew Scheer now in 2026 I actually prefer more as a politician now than Andrew Scheer of 2019. And, but that's kind of how that all went, was it just got so much, hey, let's just dunk on Trudeau in 2019, that let Trudeau get a minority instead of putting out what is going to be different and what's the hopeful message that Conservatives have, unfortunately. That didn't happen. Wickenden says, the government is necessary because people left unchecked will do evil. The government is full of people left unchecked. 100%. Couldn't agree more. So we will leave it on Zoran Mamdani was backed by Soros. I'll have to take your word for it. I have to look into that. I don't know if that's 100%. I wouldn't be surprised if that's true. It's more so what I mean. I've heard it. I haven't double checked it, so I'm not going to say that that's truth or fact. However, likely at this present time. So I'll leave it there, folks. This has been a good chat. You guys have been amazing and fantastic. So enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you this afternoon. Have yourselves a good one with whatever it is you're doing, whether it be working the oil sands or mining in Saskatchewan or doing schoolwork in Ontario. Whatever it is you're doing, wherever you are. I love you. I'm out. Peace.